Next speaker is Nigel Titley, as well as being UK North co-chair and generally good chap. Nigel is also a member of the RIPE NCC board, and he's going to talk to us about some recent policy changes in terms of RIPE NCC address allocations, which may have impact on what you're doing. Nigel.
Am I turned on here? Yes. Okay, first time anybody's accused me of being switched on. Right. Okay, I'm just going to take 10 minutes of your time to tell you about some changes that have come about in a couple of RIPE policies. This is normally incredibly boring stuff, but this is going to cost you money, so might be worth looking at it. Okay, I'll give a quick rundown on the RIPE policy development process, and then we're going to look at two policies, 20701 and 20708. Okay, and what effect it might have on you. RIPE runs a policy development process, which is how policies are developed in the RIPE region. There's a surprise. Note this is the RIPE. This has nothing to do with the RIPE NCC. Okay, so this is how you guys generate policies which ultimately shape the internet in this particular bit of the globe. Okay, anybody can create a policy. You usually discuss it on one of the working group mailing lists. You submit it to the chair of the appropriate working group, and he basically says yes or no, he or she, I suppose, although I can't think of any female working group chairs. Oh, you're still on, are you? I thought you'd given up. Sorry, Bijal. Bijal is a working group chair, but since the IXP working group never comes up with policies... Services are you now? Oh God, I'm hopeless. Anyway, right, wake up. You submit it to the chair, male or female, of the appropriate working group, and they accept it or not, and then you kick it around on the mailing list for 4 weeks, up to 4 weeks, which is the discussion phase. And finally, after 4 weeks and after things have been kicked around a bit, the proposal and the working group chair decide whether or not to move it on to the next phase. Next phase is a review phase, where this is normally where the RIPE NCC gets involved, because they very often end up having to draft a new document. And this is Phyllis, who normally sorts this out. Phyllis, who you may know. This gets kicked back to the working group. If there's consensus in the working group, then you go on to the next phase. If there isn't, you go back to the previous phase. Pass go, do not collect £200. And finally, you end up in the conclusion phase, where there's a final call. Everybody says, yeah, that's fine. And then finally, the working group chair's collective decides whether or not the policy has been appropriately followed, and then the policy becomes accepted. Okay, now you know how it works. Okay, we're going to look at two policies. Policy 20701. This one covers direct internet resource assignments to end users from the RIPE NCC. In particular, this covers PI allocations. You all know what PI space is. This is space that's provider independent. You don't get it from your ISP, you get it direct. Okay, and you can take it with you, which is nice. Some people like this for some reason. 20701 actually allows this address space to be assigned directly to an end user without an LIR getting involved. Okay? But, and here's the sting in the tail, such end users to which PI address space gets assigned have got to have a direct or indirect contractual relationship with the RIPE NCC. So this means you end up either signing a contract with your ISP, depending on how they decide to play things, or directly with the RIPE NCC, if you want that sort of thing. And this is a further sting in the tail, it's retrospective. That is, if you've got PI address space, you're affected. You are going to end up either in some sort of contractual relationship with the RIPE NCC or with your ISP. Okay? There's a few implications of this. Some really only relate to the RIPE NCC, because we've actually had to set aside about 5 members of staff to actually track down all these PI address holders. And they've all either got to sign a contract direct with the RIPE NCC, or they've got to work through their existing LIR, which is usually their ISP. And there are obviously going to be ongoing costs associated with PI address space, because with contracts come costs. One of the nice things is that we end up with a bit of garbage collection. In other words, if somebody's got PI space and they're dead, or their company is dead, or they're lost, or whatever, then this PI space can actually be recovered, which could be nice, particularly given that IP address space is running out and all the rest of it. Okay, what the Address Policy Working Group said when they finally concluded this policy was that the way they would like charging to be done is a per PI block charge. The alternative is to actually just roll the PI blocks into your general size, okay, and maybe it pushes you up into the next charging band or whatever. I assume everyone knows how charging for LIRs works. Okay, they look at how much address space you've got and they charge you as a ultra small, small, medium, large, huge registry. Okay, so the idea is you could pull this PI address space in and it might shove you up a band or whatever. But the Address Policy Working Group preferred a per PI block charge, and they suggested €100 per block, okay, which sounds lovely. It's a nice thing. RIPE NCC, when the policy was passed, actually went and had a look at their accounts and look at the various customers or members or whatever we call them today. And one or two members were going to be in for a pretty nasty shock. €74,000, I think, was the maximum charge that one particular member was going to be faced with if we did per block charging. And working on the principle of least surprise, we decided it probably wasn't a good idea to spring it on people with only a month's notice. So, for this year, 2008-2009, what we've done is rolled the PIs into your PI space, PA space. So you might end up going up a boundary, you might not, but it's going to be a fairly small change. But from 2009 onwards, there will be €100 per PI block per annum charge. And this is for PI space that you hold or PI space that your customers hold. Okay? So, what do you need to do? If you hold PI space, but you're not an LIR, then your LIR is going to have to do something. Okay? Make sure they do know that they've got to do something. They may decide to pass the charge on to you, they may not, but it might be a good idea to find out. If you are an LIR, and probably most people in this room are, then make sure you've got a policy for passing that PI charge on. You may want to get contracts re-signed, you may want to do whatever, okay? But I don't think anybody in this room is going to get faced with €74,000. None of you is a German PTT, are you? No, okay, right. So, but it might be a good idea, okay? And bear in mind that some of these PI blocks might be customers that left you years ago, okay? But it's still registered through you or whatever, and so it might be worth having a look at your address space. Okay, that's 2007-01. This is 2007-08. This is a completely different one. This is a mechanism for allowing transfer of IPv4 address space, which sounds terribly, terribly innocuous. Okay, but it's actually potentially one of the largest things that's happened on the internet in about 25 years. It lets one LIR transfer address space to another LIR. Now, there's no mechanism for doing this at the moment unless you buy somebody else and get their address space. There is now a means for any one of you to get address space and transfer it, possibly with some money involved, to another LIR somewhere in the room. Okay, it's only within the RIPE region, and the RIPE NCC has to approve it, so the receiving person, the receiving LIR, has to satisfy the usual RIPE criteria. And so, at the moment, it's not going to have much of an effect because there's plenty of address space out there, at least for the next 2 years. Okay, but as soon as the cupboard is bare, this is going to make a bit of difference. Okay, other things. The address space must be registered and signed at the transfer. There's going to be no inter-RIR transfers, at least for the moment. And there's absolutely nothing about market values in this because that's nothing to do with the RIPE NCC or any other RIR. Okay, so if you do agree to swap money, then that's between you and the receiving and the selling and the receiving, transmitting RIRs, LIRs. Yes. Anyway, your business. The implications are obvious. It creates a market in IP addresses, which may mean that government gets involved, which would be unfortunate. But there we are. It's got no real effect until after the addresses run out, unless you're completely mad. People are actually buying and selling address spaces in the ARIN region, or trying to. Why they're doing this when it's essentially free, nobody's quite sure. But there we go. Another thing is it may well create an asset that your bean counters may need to take an account of. Okay, if you've got a couple of Class A's or something, then they'll be worth an awful lot of money, and it might want to appear on your books, and you might get taxed on it. Your bean counter. Talk to your local friendly bean counter, and he will no doubt be able to tell you. One of the good things is that it may provide a source of IPv4 address space after after exhaustion day, after ARIN runs out and IANA runs out and the RIPE NCC runs out and whatever. It may do. Nobody's too sure. We'll have to wait and see. And we hope that any market is likely to be short-lived. Right? We hope that the existence of a market means that people will transit to IPv6 as quickly as possible, and everybody's hoping this. It may not. It's a lovely big experiment. Okay, again, implications. What you need to do. Tell your bean counters. An IPv4 address space is approximately $3 to $4 per /32. So you can easily work out what your assets are here. Okay, somebody ought to know about it. Otherwise, there's going to be questions asked in a couple of years' time. Think about recovering and aggregating any address space you have, because it may be worth money. And the bigger the blocks, the more it'll be worth. And on the other hand, if you haven't got much address space, you better start budgeting for buying some, because you might need it. But of course, the best thing you can do is migrate to IPv6, because then none of this will affect you. Well, okay, RIPE conclusions from this short talk anyway. RIPE mailing lists are an excellent cure for insomnia. Try reading one of these days. However, RIPE proposals are starting to have non-technical repercussions. So it's a good idea to have at least somebody in the organisation keeping an eye on them. And that's it. Just keep an eye on things. Thanks very much, everyone. Questions? Adrian? Is it Adrian? Yes. Yeah. Cool. Memory doesn't let me down for once.
Hi. Adrian from Andrews and Arnold again. I'm just pondering what the existing legal framework is by which an end user might have PI space at present, and whether that legally allows you to start imposing a fee for it, or whether they can just say, no, I'm not paying, I'm keeping this.
That's an interesting one, yes. Our lawyers, or RIPE NCC's lawyers, have looked at this and decided there is a case. The thing is that address space is only loaned to you anyway. You don't own it. So it can always be called back at any time. That's the way it goes. Legally, it seems to have legs. At least under Dutch law, anyway. They are just a number, yes. However, they're a number with incredible value.
How do you stop someone keeping their PI space? How do you stop them keeping out of it?
You issue it to somebody else.
And that person who's paying for it is going to be cross with you. Sorry about that. I thought I'd finished asking questions. Yeah, but you issue it to someone else, but that someone else is going to be a bit miffed. They're paying for this PI space, and it's not working properly because someone else is still announcing it.
Well, this is the trouble. You're not paying for PI. Oh, you mean the person that it's been transferred to? Yes, that's quite
It's
interesting.
a bit like
and this is
allocating-
where secure routing actually comes into things. Right. This.
I was just going to make the point that that's why Nigel's got a proposal out there to bring certification.
Yeah, this isn't my proposal.
Sorry,
I hasten
okay,
to
then.
add. Yes, but there is a third proposal here that actually gives the RIPE NCC teeth, which actually means that IP address space can be signed, which, when we actually get secure into domain routing, means that it's quite easy to switch someone off. And that's got very, very disturbing implications. Curtis.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I mean, there's you can joke a bit about the secure inter-domain routing ever becoming available, but there is also the proposal from Rudiger that's been going around the RARs, is that the RARs take the known authoritative source or owner of these resources, populate the X509 certificates as from the SIDR working group in the ITF, create the repository, and then you can have your nice script go and pull that and build your ACLs for your routers today based on this.
Yeah.
That is not touching any protocol work today. It's just operational impact, which is actually a pretty clever proposal.
Yeah, it is. Yes. Okay.